Here. Here. Okay, let's get rolling. We're going to go back to item 26 if Stephen gets his bicycle shirt and he's good to go. Asset management plan, please.
Commissioners, item 26 is a request to extend the timeline. At the October meeting of 2015, the department said that they would be back in May with performance measures and targets for the asset management plan for the 4 assets that were chosen for the first phase of the asset management plan. Unfortunately, the federal process, rulemaking process, still isn't in place. They are asking to have an extension until the August Commission meeting. What I would stipulate is that you do allow the extension till August of 2016, but require that the department come back with performance measures and targets, irregardless of if the feds have gotten their act together or not. The department will, if the feds haven't gotten their show together, the department comes back with its own performance measures and targets that later on would be made copacetic with whatever the feds do later on. So that's the motion, is that they be allowed to have the extension but come back with measures and targets in August.
Second. Okay, it was moved by Commissioner Tavallone, seconded by Commissioner Burke. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Aye. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay. Now we skip we got to what, 47, 48? Okay, so we go to item number 47, please. And that's going to be with Garth, Innovations in Transportation.
Commissioners, we're fortunate to have Johnny Morris from Peloton Technologies here to talk about their concept and the work that they're doing on truck platooning. Truck platooning holds a lot of promise in terms of reducing the fuel consumption from trucks, thus, saving money from the trucking firms, but then also environmental benefits from the air quality standpoint, the greenhouse gas emissions reduction standpoint. So we have Johnny here to give us an overview in terms of their concept.
Morning, everyone. Morning, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to come and share a little bit about what we do. We have a short video that we're going to go ahead and show, and then I'll get into it.
How's Emma doing?
She misses you.
I know. I'll be home soon.
Partner available. Proceed at 54 miles per hour. Proceed at speed limit. Rendezvous in 1 minute. Ready to platoon. Now platooning.
Hey, lead truck. How's it going up front?
They're clearing up a jam in Grand Junction, but it should be good by the time we get there. How's it going back there?
We got a Challenger coming up on us real fast.
Cut-in detected.
All right, the Challenger's exiting now.
10-4, where are you headed?
I'm going home. It's my daughter's first birthday.
Before you know it, she'll be running. I'm going to stop for fuel up ahead.
Sounds good. I'm gonna keep going.
Stay safe out there.
Thanks, I will.
Platoon ending.
Some excellent acting by our drivers there. They're amateurs, but you know, they did a good job. So I know we have some short time, and being the first one, I don't want to throw everyone off schedule, so I'll try and breeze through these quickly and then happy to answer any questions you have at the end. So we're a Mountain View-based technology company. We have a great management team, veterans from Tesla, VW, the White House, Oracle, and Dr. Chris Gerdes of Stanford is there in black and white. He's still with us, but no longer formally affiliated, as he's currently the Department of Transportation's first Chief Innovation Officer, US DOT. We also have a great board of directors headlined by Rodney Slater, former Secretary of Transportation in the Clinton administration. We also have a great group of investors, including Volvo, Denso, UPS, Nokia, etc. So what is truck platooning? Truck platooning is something that's actually been around for many years, mostly in a research format. There have been research projects around the world, Europe, Japan, the Convoy project in Germany, and are still ongoing, including you might have heard about the EU platooning challenge that was held last month, where several trucks from different manufacturers in Europe all platooned to the port of Rotterdam. There's also the ongoing Caltrans UC Berkeley Path project that I'll touch on a little bit more in the future. So what is truck platooning? You saw it in the video, but you know, what has been researched before is vehicle control. How do you get two vehicles to sync acceleration and braking such that they can be brought together more closely, drafted, save fuel, while keeping it safe. So a lot of the research projects have done, you know, kind of vehicle control research. What we've done, since we're focused on commercialization, is we figured out what do you need to actually do to make this operational and safe for public roads. So we've added a lot of redundancies, user interface that drivers find intuitive, health monitor of the system, and then we've also added a cloud component. This is something that I think is somewhat unique to what we do. All the trucks are connected to the cloud via 4G communications. We have a network operations center that monitors all the trucks, only allows them to platoon on appropriate multi-lane divided highways, and you know, approves every single platoon, so you can't have drivers just deciding to platoon down a street in the city. So just going through some of the system elements, what we do is we take each truck, and the first thing we want to do is make each truck individually safer. We do that by making sure that they have the latest state-of-the-art collision mitigation systems that are available. Then we connect it to our network operations center. They're always connected. They can receive over-the-road, over-the-horizon alerts on adverse weather, traffic, road conditions. And then we use wireless DSRC vehicle-to-vehicle connection to link two pairs of trucks together to synchronize the braking and acceleration of the rear truck with that of the front. The experience in the rear truck is essentially like cruise control. Both drivers are always steering, always responsible for their trucks, but the rear driver has his or her foot off the pedals so that the truck is matching the acceleration and deceleration of the front truck. And as I mentioned, the Network Operations Center makes sure that they can only platoon when safe, where safe, and that they're correctly ordered based on the braking abilities of each truck that we dynamically measure. So just to give you a sense of what this allows us to do, in a normal manual driving situation, you have to wait for the driver to perceive that a vehicle in front of it is slowing down. Then the driver has to react, and then there's brake lag inherent to air brake systems. Using radar systems, you still have to wait for the radar to detect that the front truck is slowing down, and then the system can react. This is like a typical collision mitigation system that's available on the market now. What we do is we actually connect the trucks via wireless link. This allows the rear truck to know that the front truck has activated its brakes before the front truck even starts to slow down. That way we can bring them closer, improve the aerodynamic profile of two trucks, and save fuel. And as I mentioned, the Network Operations Center is connected to the trucks all times. It's collecting a tremendous amount of data on the trucks, which can be useful for fleets, can be useful for drivers. Properly anonymized, it can also be useful for governments to understand what's going on the roads. So what are the benefits of platooning? Why are we doing this? As many of you know, the freight industry is a massive industry. It's the backbone of the economy. There's a saying, if you bought it, a truck brought it. And fuel is an incredibly large part of their costs. Even with relatively low diesel prices, it's about a third of their operating costs, and these fleets are often operating with 1 to 3% margin. There are additionally massive accident costs, and I mentioned the net industry profit. So what we're doing is with collision mitigation systems, we're preventing accidents. With platooning and drafting, we're saving fuel, and we're helping drivers improve decision making through over-the-horizon alerts and enhancing their awareness of the road environment. What we've measured through independent testing done with NACFE in a major fleet is 10% fuel savings on the rear truck, 4.5% savings on the front truck. This is at about a 40-foot gap, so it's about a 7.5% average fuel savings across 2 trucks. You also have corresponding emissions reductions. You're generating high-quality data that can be shared and analyzed. You're getting more out of the existing infrastructure you have. We believe the system can pay for itself in less than a year, so it'll be attractive to fleets. And there are also additional low-speed applications of platooning. There's a concept called platooning signal priority, where you take a freight signal priority system where trucks will get green lights so that they don't have to slow down. And if you add slow-speed platooning to that, you can lower the footprint of 2 trucks essentially to get them out of ports to reduce congestion. So our current operations, we have a lot of government engagement. With Rodney Slater on the board, one of the strong suits of our company, I think, is that we understand that we have a responsibility both to develop the technology and to work with stakeholders and policymakers to ensure that it's implemented in a safe way that's accepted by the public. We work on a couple of federally funded projects, one with Auburn University, and we're also kind of a minor partner on the Caltrans PATH project. And then with states, each state kind of has different minimum following distance laws that we sometimes have to work with states to figure out how we're going to be able to test. We're working very closely with Caltrans, with CHP in California to understand how we can do this in a way that works for California. Currently we've done demonstrations in Utah, Nevada, Michigan, Florida, California. You can see on there. Several states have passed legislation that allow for testing. Other states have given us administrative approval. We continue to be engaged at the state level throughout the country to make sure that we can bring this technology to states to improve the economic competitiveness of their fleets and reap the benefits for the public. So I think I got through that fairly quickly, but I'm happy to answer whatever questions you have.
Questions? Commissioner?
Just a couple of quick questions on how it would work in a real situation.
Sure.
So it's only available if you're in a multi-lane road, right?
Correct.
If it's just a 2-lane road, I can't see that would be very good.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
each truck is connected with GPS, and so it uses a map that essentially we call it a geofence. It says, unless it's on this particular road in this segment, the platooning system won't work.
So if you have, suppose you have 6 or 7 trucks, and maybe there's 1 or 2 that aren't participating, they don't have the equipment or whatever, but they happen to be in the middle. How do you deal with something like that? You just...
Yeah, so are you talking about before they form or while
they're starting to form up, but you've got a couple in the middle that aren't going to be participating?
Right, so one of the things that we're working very closely with states with is what is an appropriate platooning indicator so that you know which trucks would be equipped with the system and which aren't. The Network Operations Center knows each truck individually and each driver individually, so it can actually give you a visual indication of the truck that you're trying to match up with. And there's a little bit of maneuvering that has to occur so that, if you're a front truck and you're waiting for, a follower truck to join up with you, you might move all the way to the right, kind of slow down and potentially let another truck pass you to get out of the way so that you can form that platoon.
Yeah. I mean, it looks like a good technology. I can just see some vehicle, auto drivers are prone to cutting in front of trucks without regard to how quickly they can brake, and it's an unsafe situation. But a lot of ignorant drivers out there. But if you got a whole line of trucks going, and they happen to be on the left lane, and suddenly realize they've got to get over on an off ramp, they're going to freak out and try to cut in front of somebody or do something, So.
Yeah, I guess the other thing I'd mention is that the drivers at all times are empowered to basically brake the platoon. So if the driver sees that a truck is trying to get over, he or she isn't stuck, kind of glued to the truck in front. They can apply the brakes, back off safely. The system will still brake if the front truck brakes, because you wouldn't want to shut off the system when you're 40 feet away from the truck in front of you. Cut-in detection, cut-in response is something that we're spending a lot of time on. We know that passenger vehicle drivers, even if it's a 50-foot gap, 40-foot gap, will try and shoot that gap at some points. And so, as you saw in the video, there's kind of a system in response to that.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Commissioner Gometti?
I understand how the second truck saves fuel because it's drafting. Explain to me how the first truck is saving fuel.
So the first truck, when it's going down the road alone, the air is going over the truck, and then it's actually creating a vortex behind the truck that essentially kind of tugs at the truck.
Okay.
That slows it down. So when you have a second truck behind it, that vortex is destroyed, and the air keeps flowing smoothly. So you actually see fuel savings in the front truck.
So if I'm the first truck and I'm only saving 4.5%, and the other guy behind me is saving 11, do they switch? I mean,
So they're always ordered based on on braking ability. So if you have a either a really light or a really heavy truck that has a longer braking length, and then you have kind of a medium loaded truck that has a shorter braking distance, that shorter braking distance truck is always going to be in the rear. The kind of initial implementations of this were the concept is it will be with larger fleets. So they don't care if one truck gets 4.5 and one truck gets 10, because it's all savings for the fleet. In the future, with higher penetration rates, you could imagine kind of inter-fleet platooning, and in that case, we could kind of square up the fuel savings benefits in the back end of the system. So how much they're paying per mile might change slightly if they're the front truck or the rear truck.
thank you.
Sure.
Commissioner Gardino?
Chair Inman, thank you. Johnny, this was excellent. I find the use of technology like this really inspiring.
Thank you.
Could you share with us quickly, what's the biggest technological challenge currently, and what's the biggest policy or regulatory challenge in California?
Sure. So the biggest technological challenge, I think, is kind of what I touched on in one of the earlier slides, which is, it's fairly mature technology to get two trucks to connect and to link up the braking and acceleration. The challenge is really to make sure that you're engineering to an automotive standard, which is something that I think Silicon Valley isn't we're only starting to kind of get into the automotive space. Thankfully, our management team isn't a couple of 20-year-olds in a garage. It's people that have worked for automakers before, so they understand what it is to engineer to an automotive safety standard. So thinking through all those corner cases, making sure that the system will respond in an intuitive way to drivers. And so, one of the things we do, we're right in Mountain View next door to Moffett Airfield, so we do a lot of safety testing on Moffett to make sure that we're thinking through all the different eventualities, and we're not just putting this out there where it works, 90% of the time, but, the corner cases are problematic. The biggest challenge in California, we're really lucky to have folks like Senator Bell, who have shown great leadership in making sure that connected vehicle technology can be tested. SB 719 gives Caltrans the authority to do connected vehicle testing. And so through the PATH program, there will probably be some truck platooning at closer following distances testing coming up on California roads. But really, it's kind of working with CHP, working with Caltrans, working with other stakeholders to figure out what is that pathway to commercialization. So limited testing in a very controlled environment is one thing. but figuring out, we're the first ones to do this. We're kind of pioneers, so figuring out, what is the appropriate, safety standard to apply in a way that allows us to generate benefits, and it's not, we're not waiting 5 years for a regulatory process. But I feel very confident that there's great leadership in the state to make that happen. Yeah.
Commissioner Dunn?
Johnny, thank you. I'm very fascinated by all of this. And in fact, I've had to hand tissues to the chair because the tears were rolling down her face. She's so excited about this. Who's talking? I've seen stories about in Australia where they'll have whole many trucks in platoons. How is that related to that activity, and can you do more than 2 trucks in the system?
Sure. So yeah, you're absolutely right. In Australia, they have what they call road trains, which is very long, multiple trailers and multiple tractors. That's an activity that they kind of do in the outback. There's kind of nothing out there, and so that's kind of the safety risks of that are something that they've determined are acceptable. Obviously, I don't think we're going to be having road trains on I-5. There's been obviously a lot of debates within states and at the federal level about what are appropriate trailer lengths, how many. One of the things that we feel that this technology can do is kind of give the same efficiencies that something like road trains can offer to fleets, but do it in a way that's safer, that's enhancing the driver's professional abilities to make sure that we have the most advanced safety systems and that the trucks can stop safely in the event of a slowdown up ahead, a sudden accident up ahead, or a traffic jam or something like that.
So it's just 2 for now.
Yeah, and so we're really focused on 2 trucks. We feel that anything beyond 2 is technically very possible, but you start to run into larger problems with allowing merging traffic, public acceptance, things like that. I think that actually the UC Berkeley PATH project is platooning 3 trucks, and in Europe some of the research projects have done 3 trucks. So technically, it's not really so different than doing 2. It's just from a commercialization standpoint, we've decided that kind of 2 is right now the sweet spot. If you start talking about dedicated lanes, dedicated routes, then you can do 3 or 4 or 5, and you get even better fuel savings.
Malcolm?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. My compliments to Peloton, and I want to make sure that we'll continue to work with you on legislation and reviewing this technology as best we can. One thing I don't think you spoke enough about is, in addition to the benefits that you offered up, we do think if this is done correctly, it can have some safety benefits, and you touched on that.
Yep.
One example of that, to put it in perspective, and you talked about the over-the-horizon alert and the information going to the cloud. We think there's great benefit to end-of-queue warnings to trucks that are coming up on slower traffic, and I think this technology will offer up that safety benefit. But I actually think that technology may be out there in a lot of fleets today, and I'm interested in pursuing that today as far as end-of-queue warning systems. And maybe you can talk just briefly about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the system and the technology integrated in the system lends itself to a lot of different applications. You essentially have a connected truck that, in a lot of ways, is a big sensor platform. So it's collecting a lot of data, and it's also able to accept data. You can push data, whether it's end-of-queue warnings, traffic warnings. I also touched a little bit on potential port applications. I guess the other thing I'd mention is with regard to collision mitigation systems. These are systems that are out in the market now. They've proven to help reduce the kind of #1 accident with heavy trucks, which is hitting, rear-ending a vehicle in front. But the penetration rates of these systems are only in the kind of high single digits, low double digits, whereas in Europe they're in the 80-90% because there's a mandate there. Obviously, doing mandates takes a lot of time. There's a lot of kind of economic, evidence that you need to provide to allow for a mandate. But what our system does is it can kind of improve the economic incentive to adopt those systems, because instead of just getting a safety benefit, which for fleets is a little bit amorphous to their bottom line, because accidents are relatively rare for any one particular fleet. But if you can tie also a fuel savings economic benefit, it allows those systems to be adopted at a much faster rate absent a mandate.
And one more comment of interest to Peloton and the commission. We're forming a coalition along Interstate 10 from California through Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas. And that's an active coalition that's formulating to try to facilitate efficient goods movement along that corridor. And there may be an opportunity for us to talk about what opportunity exists on that corridor all the way from California ports through Texas for technology like this. So we'll keep that in mind as we formulate our coalition and what Peloton may be interested in.
Yeah, we'd be happy to talk to you. We're in conversation with those states, and actually our first fleet trial will likely be in Texas, either later this year or the beginning of next year.
So lots of really good stuff here. Thank you. Malcolm, on your last comments there about the multi-state coalition, I think there's a whole bunch of reasons because the U.S. DOT is very inclined, in my opinion, to look at these multi-state collaborations. So I think it's really important for us to push forward with that. And I think when we think about the next round of fast lane grants, I'm really hoping that we take a very aggressive position on a whole bunch of these innovation opportunities. And I love what you're doing. A question for you, is the California Trucking Association involved? Because we have a very active association here, and I think we need to engage them early on and make sure. And then I would argue that we have organic road trains today. All you have to do is go on the 60 freeway between the 710 and the 15, and we have them every day, all day. So I think make sure that we're on the highways often, because I think we may end up with our first opportunities not even being what we're thinking today, but having another application to solve. I share Commissioner Zarp's concerns about these million little cars that want to dash through. We're always in a hurry, all of us, doesn't matter where we are today in our lives. And we try to mix the itsy-bitsy cars that are getting smaller and smaller. And so it's a challenge when we're mixing the oil in the water, so to speak. So I think, but I really want you to keep up the great work and also make sure that you're out talking to the folks that are doing it every day. Because I think to another one of Commissioner Arp's questions, what's in it for me is going to be important. So I think that we need to have win-win-win situations. Because that trucker really wants to get home to his child's birthday. And while saving the 10% fuel, he's going to do a value decision there too and think, can I get home faster? So we've got to make sure that obviously safety is number one, but you all do heavy lifting in terms of our economy. So I think I wish there were like 1,000 of these companies really pushing the innovation. Because there's a world of opportunities. Does anybody have a truck-only lane in any of your sample states that you're working on?
You know, I don't think so, at least not on the routes that we're currently kind of exploring.
There are sections of routes that are truck lanes. They don't limit access to cars, but trucks have to be in those lanes, and that's typical in the Northeast Corridor on 95 and maybe some other states. They have truck lanes, but they're not truck-only lanes. You can interact, but the trucks can't go in the other lanes.
But I could see a world of really wonderful opportunity if we did have a way to have truck-only lanes and allow this to be safer. Yeah. Just a few dollars here and there. So, any other comments, question? Well, thank you, and thank you, former Chair Dunn, for getting us to focus on some innovation. So, we appreciate it. Thank you
so much.
Okay, next up is item 48, the 2015 report on Caltrans review of the MPO organization's RTPs. Coco, are you up, or who's going to do this first? Laura?
Well, Laura was going to introduce me, but I'll go ahead and just start out. So thank you very much for the opportunity to be here to brief you on this effort that we did. Actually, it was at your direction and at the direction of your staff that you asked Caltrans to undertake a review of the regional transportation plans. So we did that. The report is actually titled California MPO, or Metropolitan Planning Organization, Regional Transportation Plan Review. And you actually have a link to the full report in your briefing material. The primary purpose of the report is to inform the next update of the Regional Transportation Plan guidelines. So that was really the emphasis and the focus that we were working on. And you're actually going to receive an update of where we are with that a little bit later today. So a little bit about what's in the report. So the report was prepared after all 18 MPOs adopted their regional transportation plans, incorporating their sustainable community strategy elements as of December 2015. And as I mentioned earlier, it's really a resource and a tool to update the next regional transportation plan guidelines. So our emphasis was not an evaluation of all of the RTPs. It was really just to sort of make some recommendations to identify changes and additions. We worked with your staff and identified 5 specific focus areas to actually do the review of. And those related to the sustainable community strategies, the public participation process, tribal government consultation, financial elements, and transportation expenditures, as well as performance measures. So those were the areas that we actually undertook when we kind of looked at the review of all of the RTPs. As a result of that review, we came up with 14 recommendations that are actually listed in the report. I'm not going to read those all, but for reference, they actually begin on page 4, right after the executive summary of the report, for you to look at later. I would like to highlight that before actually finalizing the report, a draft of the report or the review was sent out to all of the MPOs, all of the regional transportation planning agencies, as well as our state agency partners. So we worked very closely with the Air Resources Board, Housing and Community Development, as well as CalCog, to make sure that we allowed for time for them to review the findings of the review. And we gave them kind of a 2-week comment period. I'll summarize just briefly what some of those comments were. In general, the comments highlighted support for a separate MPO and RTP guidelines. So one of the recommendations were there's a lot of complexity related to the way that regional transportation planning is done in a metropolitan area versus, say, a rural area. So one of the recommendations was to separate those two out, and there was general support for that recommendation. There was concern that was expressed that if we added any increased efforts that were recommended by the actual review report without providing additional resources, just to be cautious about that. There was support for the RTP guidelines to provide guidance while at the same time remaining and leaving that flexibility for the regions to sort of do RTP development a little bit more flexible. And there was also caution regarding reference to CEQA guidelines prior to the finalization of those guidelines. So those were kind of the highlights of the comments that we received from our regional partners. In conclusion, we're really pleased to deliver this report to you at your request and at the request of your staff. We really see it as a resource, a really good tool as we are embarking in the update of the next Regional Transportation Plan guidelines. We look forward to continuing to work with you and your staff, as well as our regional partners and our state agency partners, to sort of move into that phase, is really to take the lessons learned from the review and incorporate them into the update of the Regional Transportation Plan guidelines. And that's pretty much what I have as a brief update to let you know where we were with this review. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions? All right, well, a lot of work went into it. I hope that we can make sure that our partners find it useful as well. You know, I was circling how many pages, the size of some of these documents. So it seems like if you're looking for a job on that EIR side, there's lots of work being done. So anyway, thank you, Coco.
Yeah, we tried to make it clear cut to just go to the 14 recommendations that highlight kind of the focus. So thank you very much.
Great. Okay, item 49, Laura.
Good morning, Commissioners. This is an informational item to provide you with an overview of the timeline and process to update the 2010 Regional Transportation Plan guidelines and to develop first ever guidelines for the California Transportation Plan pursuant to Senate Bill 486. These guidelines will be developed concurrently. As Coco mentioned, we are working closely with Caltrans Division of Transportation Planning on this effort. We anticipate holding a kickoff and releasing draft guidelines for comment at the end of June, and we estimate adopting final guidelines in December. Both sets of guidelines will focus on clearly conveying the state and federal requirements for RTPs and the CTP, and will be developed in a stakeholder-driven, transparent, and public process. During this process, we will discuss with our stakeholders the potential incorporation of recommendations from the 2015 MPO RTP review report, as Coco just explained. We also envision during this process convening stakeholder work groups to address specific areas of the guidelines that may be in need of update. Sections such as the Sustainable Community Strategy and Alternative Planning Strategies, modeling, public health, goods movement, active transportation, and climate change planning, among others. We are currently engaging with state, regional, and tribal partners to get feedback on the proposed schedule and the areas of the guidelines that they feel are important to address. That concludes my update. I am happy to take any questions or feedback you may have.
All right, Commissioners, do we have any questions? Hearing none, we'll move on. Item number 50, Capital Outlay Support Workload Forecasting Methodology Report. Eric?
If that's not a mouthful, I don't know what is.
It's like, whoa.
Yes, thank you, Commissioners. So you're aware that one of the Commission's recommendations in its annual report was for the administration to convene a group of folks together to try to work on coming to some consensus around the methodology involved in developing the COS workload forecast for Caltrans. The capital outlay support budget is a very large budget, and every year it gets presented to the legislature sometime in May, and they've been trying to get it earlier every year, but it's very difficult to put together. And then the legislature very quickly has to make a decision on, is this the right number? Where does the number come from? And it's a challenge. It's a real challenge for the legislature and for Caltrans, and there has been debate for many years now about whether or not that the number is correct, if it's an accurate way to estimate the workload and or figure out how much money to spend on it. So the Commission recommended that the administration try to address this issue. The administration, Secretary Kelly, said that sounds like a really great idea. How about you guys do that? So the Commission accepted the challenge, and we have put together a really great group of folks from finance and the LAO and ledge staff and agency, Caltrans staff, and we've spent a lot of time working on this. We've had 3 meetings, 3 very long meetings, where we have spent most of our time identifying the real problem and also really better understanding so that everybody in the room could understand how Caltrans puts together their annual budget request. And it is complicated. It is a lot of work. So this item is an interim report that the Commission staff put together to send to agency and Secretary Kelly to give an update. He in his request had asked that we do something for this year's budget process, and we responded that we thought it was too late in the budget process for us to really have an effect this year, but that we would do what we could, and so this is what we've done, and that's what the interim report describes. Essentially describes our conclusion. I think the Commission staff has concluded that the underlying problem has to do with the challenge of trying to do a fiscal year slice of a budget that is Caltrans manages on a project level, by phase. It is the dissonance between a budget, which is often multi-year project budget, with an annual slice of what every individual at Caltrans in the COS section is working on, just doesn't work. You can't turn around at the end of the year and say, well, you said that X engineer would be doing Y, and X engineer didn't do Y. So what happened, Caltrans? There's just, because of the almost limitless variables involved in all of these projects, you can't hold Caltrans accountable. The legislature can't hold Caltrans accountable that way. So, I think that pretty convincingly everyone in the group would agree that that's the ultimate problem. And our next phase as a group is to start talking about how can we overcome that dissonance. Is there a better way for for the legislature to feel like Caltrans is being accountable with the resources it's given, and more comfortable, the legislature can be more comfortable with allocating funds annually to them if, for example, the commission were more involved in oversight as the legislature has been moving toward, in the last few years. So I think that there's a lot to learn, a lot to consider. We don't want to presuppose the outcome, but I think that this fall, this group will be able to come up with some recommendations that I hope that the Commission can include in its annual report, and we can move forward with next year's budget process to really try to overcome this annual problem with the legislature. If you have any questions, I'm happy to talk about this.
We have questions from the Commission? Commissioner Art?
Just a brief comment. I think this is an important project to be involved in. I think there are a lot of questions that we have on various aspects of Caltrans' budget. Just yesterday, we were questioning, how they came up with, or at least I was, how they came up with that particular number of person years for whatever. And so I think some clarity in that. The fact that project-based budgeting doesn't mesh with annual fiscal legislative budgets is recognized, but it's not an excuse, in my view. So we're going to have to be able to figure out how do we get to the bottom of this and do a better job. Thanks.
Yes, sir. And so this is an information item, so it doesn't require any action, but with the Commission's encouragement, Commission staff will send this interim report to agency after the meeting today.
Any other thoughts, discussion?
Make a comment? Yes. Well, thank you. I want to, on behalf of the Secretary, thank you to Commission staff for taking up the challenge of looking at this. While I know the legislative staff also participated in your meetings, and I think that did help inform the discussion this year, even though a complete report was not finalized. But I did want to ask Eric, since you mentioned some of the challenges of holding or fidelity of the forecast relative to the budget year slice, could you talk a little bit more about some of the project level stuff across fiscal years? What are some of the reporting that exists on that way to look at accountability and project budgets?
Well, let me see if I can understand your question. You used a lot of big words. I think perhaps what you're suggesting is one of the things that the group did find, and I would say everyone agrees on, is that Caltrans is getting better at this all the time. This really began with a zero-based budget effort by Department of Finance and Legislative Analyst's Office in 2013, and that was also the year that Caltrans really ramped up or rolled out this new computer system called PRISM, which is how they are able to, or how they're now able to better track their workload, their project development workload. And I'm sure that Malcolm or Jim Davis can describe what PRISM does better than I can. But with that tool, they are collecting an immense amount of data, and based on how much time it takes to do. And there are tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of tasks that Caltrans is responsible for in the development of a project. I mean, they break it down to very small unit type work. And every one of those estimates for every one of those tiny variables is an estimate made by an engineer or an educated person on the process, but is ultimately still an estimate because it's just you just don't know how long it's going to take a particular engineer to do a particular type of work. It may be someone who's been doing it for 30 years and can get it done much quicker, or it might be a person who was just recently out of school, an engineer that is going to take more time. And so they use their judgment to try to estimate what they think this work is going to be. They add it all up for the task and then for the phase of the project. And with the tracking by phase of a project, Caltrans is doing a much better job of hitting the target of the estimate that they think it was going to cost. The problem that the underlying problem is the fact that they'll say, well, you know, in this part of the environmental phase in this next fiscal year, we're going to accomplish this amount of the work, and then, you know, permitting takes longer than they thought it was going to. So that engineer who was going to be working on that project in that phase is instead working on a different project in a different phase, and it's hard to track against what they thought they were going to get done, and it isn't necessarily through any fault of Caltrans or the estimation process. There's just a lot of things that come and go in the development of a project that at the end of that phase they hit, but in that slice of a fiscal year they can't necessarily predict. And so I think that if the commission could, you know, for example, had the ability to really hold Caltrans more accountable to its project development by phase and say, you know, you said it was going to cost $1 million to get the environmental done for this project, and were you able to get near to that or not? We could instill a lot more faith and confidence in the fact that Caltrans is doing what they say they're going to do. There may be other methods to increase accountability, but that's just an example of one way to do so. And then if we were able to do that, the legislature could, with more confidence, you know, in May, take that annual annual budget request and say, well, we believe that this, you know, overall you're getting the work done that you said you're going to get done. It may not be exactly what this slice looked like, but we know that you're being held accountable, and we feel more comfortable appropriating those funds on a given year.
Malcolm?
Just to add on to that, and I think Eric did a very good job in articulating the complexities of it, as well as looking at a phase of a project. And that actually is what I'm most interested in, having made a career out of project delivery, and that local partners who we're working with. If we say it's going to be 1 PY to deliver an environmental document, and you have to convert that into dollars, they want us to manage those dollars for that phase. They're less interested, if at all interested, in a half a PY this year and a half a PY next year if it's 2 fiscal years. It may be 0.7 and 0.3. They want to make sure that the phase of the project, the environmental document, or design or construction or right-of-way, is managed, and that's what I'm most interested in as well. But when you take that 1 year slice, it may come out in the computer as 0.5 and 0.5, but really what everybody wants is the budget for that phase to be managed well. And that's the difficulty of it. And when you take that 1 year slice, it's for 2,900 projects, right? And that's the complexity. I think Eric did a very good job in articulating those challenges.
It sounds a little bit similar to the excise tax challenge. So I think Commissioner Dunn.
Yeah, thanks, Eric and Malcolm and Brian as well for your comments. I just want to pull back for a second, because an insiders group that says Caltrans is getting better all the time doesn't sell publicly. Do you see what I'm saying? And nobody cares about the complexities of the projects. They don't. The public wants us to break through this crap. And when you have a 743, a CEQA that gets harder all the time, you know, I just caution you all to not just go around and go, oh, it's too hard. Experiment, do some kind of pilot, do something where you're showcasing the successes in breaking through and doing something unusual or different. We don't highlight Caltrans successes enough. Malcolm and I have had numerous conversations about this, but I just do not get complacent and self-satisfied with saying, oh, we looked at it and it's just too hard. Yeah, no sale, kids, and Caltrans public approval rating continues to plummet. You know, so I would just, you know, caution that we got to do something better. Thanks, Eric.
Susan?
Yeah, Commissioners, I just wanted to highlight the very end of this interim report. You know, the goal of this work group moving forward is to develop recommendations to increase Caltrans' accountability for how it estimates and manages its COS resources, looking at the project, how those initial project budgets are developed and managed throughout. Along with this, the work group may consider strategies to incentivize accurate estimates and reduce the tendency to overestimate needs, because that was a part of the discussion of this work group so far to date. And really, as Eric mentioned, this work group was only really able to understand the methodology as far as developing the annual budget. And so now we're going to delve more into, you know, how the initial budgets are actually estimated and really talk about, too, these regulations that are passed and the impacts that they have. So I just want to highlight that off for you.
Well, I want to add and really second Commissioner Dunn's sense of urgency and the fact that on the steps of the Capitol right now, a number of our transportation colleagues are trying to rally support for some increased investment. But I think this plays a big role in us being able to sell that. And it's always easy to criticize others, but I think we really do have to. Hundreds of thousands of tasks. Maybe we don't need hundreds of thousands. I mean, are all of those still relevant? So I think it's not just the budgeting, but it's really how we add value and deliver on the promise. So I think we have a lot more work to do on this, and I think it's something we'll never finish because process improvement is something needs to be built into all of our organizations, whatever they are. But thanks to the team that's doing this, but I'd say we still, let's keep the pressure on. Any other thoughts, comments? If not, we'll move on.
I'll just have a very short comment. I think that this is not the final report. So I assume that they're moving forward and looking at all of these variables, and of course the budget variable is a big one in terms of what actually we have available in terms of monies to carry out these projects. So they're probably going to have to go all the way back and reschedule all of these things today, knowing what positions we've taken on the finance.
Let's go. Okay, item 51, letter of no prejudice guidelines. Laurel?
Yes, Commissioners, this is an action item. We have provided to you an amended letter of no prejudice guidelines that are attached to the book item. These guidelines incorporate Proposition 1A, 1B, and Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program into the letter of no prejudice guidelines. The impetus of this was the recent passage of law to allow letter of no prejudice for the cap and trade program. So we provided a draft at the last commission meeting. Since that time, we did an amendment to add one more of the proposition program in here that I'd forgotten last time. Since then, we haven't received any comments, so we expect that there are no issues, and we recommend your approval.
Second. Moved by Commissioner Tavaloni, seconded by Commissioner Dunn. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Thank you. Okay, Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee, Mitch, you're up.
Good morning. This item is an update on the Road Charge Pilot Program and the approval of a new member for the Technical Advisory Committee. As far as the program, we are in the recruitment and testing phase of the pilot. As Malcolm mentioned yesterday, our goal is to recruit 5,000 volunteers that reflect the socioeconomic and geographic diversity of California. We have more than 5,000 vehicles that have enrolled. Almost 10% of those haven't provided all the information that they need for us to even get them in this stage, so they might be dropping out. Additionally, we're well under our targets for rural drivers, for commercial vehicles, and for low-income drivers. To that end, I've in the last month or so gone to about half a dozen rural cities, counties in Northern California, making presentations about the roads charge. And then in the coming couple of weeks, I will be at 6 or 8 more making presentations to city councils and board of supervisors talking about the road charge pilot program and encouraging them to volunteer. This week we are conducting what they call end-to-end testing, which is a dry run. There are quite a few of us in this room who are participating. Susan has a dongle in her car, and I'm taking a picture of my odometer. And it's really trying to do a dry run to fine-tune the systems. For example, E-Road, which is working with the truckers, they have installed their device in 2 trucks. Those trucks have logged over 2,000 miles, more than 10% of it's in Nevada. So, thank goodness they know where the state line is. We're learning some of the challenges in improving the user interface. Important things like sometimes in a password that you give to people, it looks like a or L looks like a number 1, so you need to be able to differentiate those if you want it to make it easy on the user. And I've been complimented on my ability to break and test the system. The pilot will go live on July 1st. While the pilot is going on, the Technical Advisory Committee will be meeting quarterly to both monitor the pilot and to discuss policy issues. In your book item is a schedule of the issues and when we expect them to be discussed at the Technical Advisory Committee. We anticipate that the Transportation Agency will be submitting a report on its findings to the legislature, to the commission, and the Technical Advisory Committee in July of next year. The commission is then required to make its recommendations regarding the pilot in its annual report to the legislature. With that, I'll conclude my presentation by recommending that the commission appoint Nidhi Kalra of the RAND Corporation to the Technical Advisory Committee. Be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Gometti?
Is 5,000 a magical number? It sounds like you've signed up more people than the 5,000, so why aren't we expanding this?
I don't know that Caltrans has sought the budgetary authority and the additional contract amendments to go beyond that. It's for every new person, there's additional cost. I think there would be a significant benefit in doing that, but I don't know that effort has been undertaken.
What's the cost?
So 5,000 was not necessarily a magical number. We thought that it was an appropriately sized pilot to be able to evaluate everything we wanted to evaluate. We also wanted a cross-section of California, so that 5,000 is broken up into a cross-section. Adding the others, each account comes at an expense and a cost. We had established a budget and got budgetary authority to do a pilot for 5,000, so we would have to spend more money to utilize every volunteer, which is up to 7,000 folks. But then in addition to that, you end up weighting heavier some of the buckets and not other buckets, because we're overrepresented in some folks in California and underrepresented in others, and the 5,000 was specifically split up. So I actually asked the exact same question, and I was talked off of that question because we don't want, the other 2,000 may all be, you know, urbanites from Los Angeles, and we don't want to overrepresent that constituent. Plus, every constituent account, every pilot participant account has a cost, and we don't have that budget. We would have to augment that budget. We are looking to augment our pilot with the federal FAST Act opportunity for grant money, but that's a different scope of work and a different technology. But that's really, the 5,000 was based on, we thought that would give us enough participants. And that's greater than what was done in Oregon. By a magnitude of 2 or 3.
Susan?
Yeah, and I just wanted to add that the Technical Advisory Committee that the Commission established did recommend the 5,000 participants, and that was based on a presentation by technical experts that looked at the sample size and did assure the committee that would be a representative sample. So I just wanted to let you all know that. As well as within that 5,000 participants, there is a breakout of different buckets as far as rural, urban, income, different types of drivers and different types of vehicles. I want to encourage all of you on the commission to look at the Road Charge website and sign up, because it would be wonderful if we have everybody here participating. Good, because we will be asked to, and we will be asking the commission to send over your recommendations at the end of all this.
Well, how about holding that mirror up to the audience, Susan, and why don't you put that challenge to everybody in the
Absolutely.
room?
Everybody in the room. It's www.californiaroadchargepilot.com, and you need to sign up now because Caltrans right now is selecting the volunteers, so now's the time.
Does that mean we each get our own dongle?
As long as you get selected for that. I do. I'll show you mine. I got it in the car.
And even a finer point on rural residents, because that's the underrepresented demographic in the pilot.
Did you say there was a low number of inner city low-income people? If you could give us some of the areas that are missing, and certainly for me in Southern California, even though I'd be willing to contact people in other areas in terms of identifying some low-income people.
I will definitely do that.
And to our folks watching from afar, you might be some of the folks that could help us out too, by virtue of the fact that you're watching us remotely today. So I'd encourage all of you who are watching and tuning in to sign up, because I think it really is important for us to have a robust pilot. I can tell you the nation, if not the world, is watching us. So we need to have a very valid, successful, informational. We need to learn from this, so it's important to do it right.
Move staff recommendation.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Gometti, a second by Commissioner Burke. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining for the record? Okay, we're finished. Okay, item 53, City of Los Angeles traffic light synchronization update.
Thank you, Commissioners. So item 53 is an information item. This is a follow-up to the March Commission meeting where the City of Los Angeles provided an update on their Proposition 1B projects under the Traffic Light Synchronization Program. To summarize the March discussion, the city received $147 million for 22 projects in 2008. 2 of those projects remain to be allocated, and approximately $30 million still needed to be invoiced. Today, at the request of the Commission, Dan Mitchell, Assistant General Manager with the city's Transportation Department, has returned to provide a progress update on the projects and to address any additional concerns the Commission may have.
Good morning, Commissioners. Again, my name is Dan Mitchell. I'm the Assistant General Manager for the City of Los Angeles Department of Transportation and its Chief Engineer. I'm here representing LADOT on behalf of our General Manager, Salita Reynolds, who had a prearranged speaking engagement this morning in Austin, Texas. Thank you for your time this morning. I appreciate the opportunity to address you and the concerns that you raised at your last meeting about the Prop 1B traffic light synchronization program projects in the City of Los Angeles. I'd like to begin with an apology. From where I sit, these projects have been moving along quite well, but in reviewing our communication with the Commission and our administration of these projects, it's clear to me that we should have done much better. And for that, I sincerely apologize. I hope that my report this morning demonstrates our commitment to correcting these errors and takes a significant step toward restoring your trust. As Mr. Janoyan relayed at your last meeting, the City of Los Angeles was deeply affected by the Great Recession, as were many cities, especially here in Stockton, and staffing at the Department of Transportation fell significantly. As we shifted into survival mode, we really focused our resources on delivering our projects, and we clearly fell behind on some of the administrative tasks associated with the Prop B funds. Our failure to submit billing and final reports on many of the TLSP projects left the impression that we were not delivering on these projects as promised. But it was the state's commitment of Prop 1B funding that allowed us to confidently push forward using our local funds to deliver these projects. Because of an adequate supply of the local funds, our accounting staff focused on billing for other grant projects and significantly fell behind on billing for these funds. As a result, the City of Los Angeles has floated over $15 million in front funding during this time. But I'm glad to report today that thanks to the attention of this Commission, we have been able to pool our accounting resources and completely catch up on the billing for all $15 million of the backlogged work. Grant accounting has been a recognized challenge for our department, and I'm happy to report that next fiscal year, the City Council of the City of Los Angeles has provided us $350,000 for a new grants management system that is going to help us significantly in streamlining our billing practices and being more efficient. Now, the City of LA also failed to submit final reports, project reports, for 7 projects. We also didn't update Caltrans and the Commission on our progress in completing the projects and the expected timeline for submitting the final reports to close them out. I'm happy to report this morning that we have now submitted 5 of the 7 outstanding reports to Caltrans, and we will be submitting the final 2 reports by the end of this month. Finally, I'd like to remind the Commission that, as Mr. Janoyan reported at the last meeting, we'll be requesting allocation of the final 5% of the Prop 1B funds at your August meeting, and we look forward to delivering those final 2 projects over the next 2 years. So I would like to thank the Commission for elevating these concerns and providing me the opportunity to address you in person. While I'm glad that we have caught up, again, I would like to sincerely apologize to the Commission for creating the impression that we were not delivering on our projects. Please know that I've taken steps to prevent these problems in the future, and know that we'll be prepared to tackle additional projects moving forward. And with that, I'm available to answer any questions you may have.
Do we have any questions? Well, since I was the commissioner, that was probably the least pleased to have the City of LA in the spotlight last time. Our city is never known for rolling in the bucks, and if you listen to the discussion we had just a few minutes ago about workforce, it seems what you're telling us is you had some workforce allocation issues also in terms of delivering. So glad to see there's been improvement, but let's make sure that we are good stewards of every dollar, whatever hat we're wearing. Okay, thank you.
You have my commitment to that.
All right, we'll move on. Item 54. Commissioner Gometti.
I need to recuse myself. I have a small development next door.
Item 54 is the approval of project for future consideration of funding. Jose?
Good morning, Madam Chair, Commissioners, and members of the public. Item 54 is an action item. This is the final EIR for the City of Oakland, Lake Merritt to Bay Trail. This is a bicycle and pedestrian bridge project. The city certified that the March 1st, 2016 addendum did not identify any new additional impacts. Staff recommends approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Dunn, seconded by Commissioner Arp. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay. We can get Commissioner Gometti back. Item 55, as soon as Commissioner gets back in.
Okay, Commissioners, item 55 is a request to authorize and execute a new lease with Basin Street Properties in Mill Valley. The department requested permission to directly negotiate with Basin Street at the January commission meeting that the commission approved. This is the final outcome of the negotiations. Staff recommends that the commission approve this new lease agreement that is in the best interest of the state with Basin Street.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, seconded by Commissioner Gometti. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay, motion carries. Item 56.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tab 56 is an action item. Commissioners, this is an action item to approve technical adjustments to programming for the 2015 Active Transportation Program. The 2015 ATP was adopted by the Commission at the October 2015 and the January 2016 meetings. At those meetings, staff indicated that there would likely be the need for technical changes and corrections. The attachment to this item lists all the identified adjustments to the 2015 ATP. Staff will bring forward one last set of technical corrections to the 2015 ATP at the June Commission meeting. Staff recommends your approval of this item.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Burke. Any further discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining for the record? Thank you. Item carries. Item 57.
Yes, Commissioners. Item 57 is an action item. This item proposes to update the Highway Railroad Crossing Safety Account Guidelines as we anticipate savings for a 2016 program of projects. The draft guidelines were presented at the March meeting and no comments were received. These final guidelines will establish a schedule for the 2016 program. All other provisions adopted in the 2008 guidelines remain the same. Recommendations for the 2016 program will be released in September.
and staff will request adoption of the program at the October 2016 meeting. Staff recommends approval.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Dunn, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni.
I have a question.
Okay.
Did I hear the word savings in there somewhere?
Yes, so these are existing projects that have come in with savings in either award or completion. So there's approximately 2.6 million right now. Not a lot, but there's some.
Thanks for that ray of sunshine. We like hearing savings. Any more discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. All in favor? Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining for the record? Motion carries. Moving on to item 58.
Yes, Commissioners, this is an action item. The department is proposing to amend the Proposition 1B Intercity Rail Improvement Program. They're proposing to delete the Coast Daylight Track and Signal Project and decrease funding for the Northern California Maintenance Facility Project, and are proposing to place those funds on the Raymer to Burnson Double Track Project in Ventura County, the new Wayside Power and Storage Project in Auburn, the new Seacliff Siding Project in Ventura County, and capitalized maintenance, some additional monies for capitalized maintenance. In addition, the department is requesting to program some funds from the Passenger Equipment Acquisition Fund in order to exercise an option to purchase an additional locomotive. This would be added to the Prop 1B dollars that are already programmed for new equipment. Staff would recommend your approval of this amendment.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
While I won't be voting against this today, I do want to say for the record, though, that the Coast Daylight project, I think, has merit. We all felt that it had merit. This had $25 million in funding. They've been depending on this money for a long time. The Transportation Agency for Monterey County and the other parts of the state that would be impacted by this, I think, are being adults in recognizing we're going through tough fiscal times. But I'm hoping we can say on the record that we're committed to this at a future date as we get through these bumpy times and not be eliminating this long term.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Can I get a read? What's the reason for deprogramming?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take it. Bruce DeTerra. We ran into the same problems with the rail program that we did under the STIP program for the interregional funds, and in order to keep projects whole, we needed to combine resources so that we could get the siding project in Ventura, the Seacliff, and to keep that going, and then also Raymer, Bernstein, to keep that, and then move some other money. So this isn't, the money all stays within the rail program, and there's no prejudice against this project. It just didn't have a deliverable segment within the same time frame, while we have other projects that are ready to go.
Is this a safety project? Seems like it is.
No, the Coast Daylight.
It's a capacity siding project. Presumably, it always has some safety benefits when we make improvements to rail. There's having to be cuts made. The dilemma with this project, and I don't think anybody is saying that it's not a good project, and I would concur with the comments by both commissioners that we want to keep an eye on the opportunities to deliver this project. This project's not ready to go. It's not going to be ready to go for the foreseeable future. The other ones are moving forward and are farther along. We would have had to reserve this money, and it would have gone unused in this time period.
Thank you.
So, and if there's anyone here from any of the impacted areas that have been partnering with us and depending on this Prop 1B set of funds for this project, if they'd also like to speak to us very briefly, feel free to do so. But if we can show a commitment in this motion today that we're not going to forget about this, that this will be a priority in the future, I think that would be quite helpful and keep faith with folks who have worked with us in good faith.
We do have two guest speakers on this motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So just so I'm clear, this is Prop 1B money we're talking about, right?
Yes.
So if it's, if you've got costs that are, you have other costs on other projects that are further along and you're going to deprogram this, there's no real assumption that there's going to be any more Prop 1B money for this project. They'll have to get the $25 million from someplace else.
Yes, and our expectation is that this project, the Coast Daylight Service, is included in the state rail plan that's undergoing an update now and will be completed in 2017. So we're not abandoning this as a whole, and this project would remain eligible for interregional funds, the ITIP, when we again have capacity to program there. So we're not abandoning the project. Again, as Director Doherty pointed out, we're moving forward with projects that are ready to go now.
Can I ask a question of clarification, Madam Chair?
Of course.
The Prop 1B funds to be reprogrammed, I believe you mentioned they were being directed to the Raymer-Burnson project. There was also a Seacliff project in the south that perhaps I'm confusing the two. I thought perhaps the redirection of Prop 1B in the south was to the Seacliff project.
There's several small changes here, and a portion of it is going to Raymer-Burnson.
And a portion to Seacliff?
Yes, yeah, Seacliff is being fully funded with the Prop 1B.
Thank you.
If I could add that the Seacliff project also benefits the Central Coast in that it's serving the surf liner going north of Ventura County. So there's still a benefit that's going, and we're building a 10,000-foot siding on the UP track so that the passenger trains don't have to wait for the freight trains. The freight trains can wait for the passenger train. So we're going to get better service there sooner than just holding the money.
Okay, we do have two guest speakers on this item. Michael Zeller.
Good morning, Commissioner Inman and members of the Commission. Again, I'm Michael Zeller. I'm a Principal Transportation Planner with the Transportation Agency for Monterey County. Our agency is also a member of the Coast Rail Coordinating Council, and Pete Rogers from SLOCOG, also a member of the council, is here to speak today on this issue. I'd like to thank Commissioner Gardino for his comments. We do appreciate highlighting the importance of this project, as deprogramming the $25 million does jeopardize the viability of this project. So I'm happy to hear that there's a commitment to help work with us in the future to identify sources of funding to keep this project moving forward. We did submit a comment letter, which you should have a copy of. That comment letter does ask for a delay in today's approval, but deviate a bit from those comments, and understanding that the approval probably will go forward, but we just ask for the Commission's help with working with Caltrans and STA to make sure that this project does not go away and that we can find funding for it in the future. Thank you.
We have a second speaker, Peter Rogers.
Good morning, Madam Chair and committee members. I'm Pete Rogers on SLOCOG staff. I'm the Deputy Director at San Luis Obispo Council of Governments, and I've been staffing this Coast Rail group for over 20 years. Normally you would get some feisty testimony from Dave Potter, but it's election season, so he's in his district. But, you know, we get it. We get it that, you know, everybody has to share this pain. You know, we've had some successes on the coastline with the Coast Rail Coordinating Council with service extensions up to San Luis Obispo. We're really happy about that. We do have the letter that we submitted on the Coast Rail letterhead. And yes, we are disappointed to lose the $25 million. It's a lot of money. But we are coming with our hat in hand, and we're feeling pretty beat up. I even got some drama here, some visual effect for you on being beat up. But we understand, you know, the hit, having to take $750 million out of the STIP, and that this is kind of collateral damage, you know, to backfill Raymer-Burnson and Seacliff, which do benefit the coastline. I do want to underscore that, you know, the service development plan that we have prepared with Caltrans does show that this is a cost-effective project. It shows that, you know, we only need $27 million to do the capital improvements to bring this forward. And the feasibility study that we've done with Amtrak shows that it would have a fare box recovery ratio of 64% and carry 124,000 people for an annual cost of around $3 million. But obviously Union Pacific doesn't agree with the dollar amounts. They want 6 times that amount. But we really have no standing to negotiate with Union Pacific. We have to rely on Caltrans and STA, and we need their support. So as the letter suggests, we request, you know, a formal commitment by your board that Caltrans and State Transportation Agency to support, fund, and negotiate the Coast Corridor improvements. So thank you, and I'm available for questions if necessary.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, and I'd like to add that to the motion, if we may, that we And Director Doherty, thank you for your words earlier and your commitment to this long term. If we can capture that on the record today, that Caltrans and SDA will continue to be the strong partners they've been with this alliance, then that would certainly meet my needs for today. And I appreciate folks coming forward, recognizing the pickle that we're all in. That's a technical term, by the way, the pickle that we're all in. And that would go a long way with me. I'd like to add that to the motion if there's a second.
Do we have a?
I'll second.
So was the motion? Carl, you made that motion?
Yes, and I know our staff will make it much more articulate than I just did.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Gardino, a second by Commissioner Burke.
I passed on the letter
Okay.
to Amtrak, and Amtrak is aware and recognized the issue.
Okay, and staff, you have the amendment and some eloquent, non-pickle words. Okay, then I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining for the record? Motion carries. Moving on, item number 59.
Yes, Commissioners, again, this is an action item. The Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority and Caltrans have requested to amend the Proposition 1A connectivity program. They're asking to revise the scope and decrease programming for the Capital Corridor Oakland to San Jose track project and ask to put those monies on the Capital Corridor travel time reduction project. Staff recommends your approval of this amendment.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Gilmetti. Is there any discussion?
What is that other project they're moving the money to?
They're moving the money to the Capital Corridor Travel Time Reduction Project, and what they're doing there is they're working on the tracks in some of the curves to put a bank in the curve so that the trains can run through a little bit more quickly. I think they're also doing maybe a couple of track straightenings in a few spots, but the bulk of it, I think, is the banking of the curves in some areas so the trains can travel through a little bit faster speed.
I think I have some statistics on that.
I don't need statistics. I just wanted to know what the project was. Sounds like a good project.
Yeah. Just brief statistics. I think it's a 10-minute travel time reduction for the Capital Corridors going to San Jose and a 7-minute travel time reduction for the ACE train into San Jose.
Thank you. Oh, okay. Those are all right statistics. I didn't mean to catch you off.
So we can then put the high-speed rail back to Southern California because you're going to be speeding stuff up?
Even faster.
Oh, goodness. Okay.
Sorry.
No, it's all cool.
I'm not bitter.
We'll call for the vote. I think we have a motion already, motion and second, yeah. So I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining for the record? Motion carries. Okay, item number 60.
Yes, Commissioners, item 60 is an action item. This is our delivered but not allocated list. These are the agencies that came in for allocation of their STIP projects, and we delayed them while we waited to see how our allocation capacity would go this year. Staff is happy to say that we are going to recommend that you allocate all of the projects on this list at this time.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Arp. Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 61.
Yes, Commissioners, this is an information item. This is a STIP amendment for notice. Metropolitan Transportation Commission, San Mateo City County Council of Governments, and San Mateo County Transportation Authority are proposing to amend the 2016 STIP that we adopted yesterday to program an AB 3090 cash reimbursement project to advance their 101 Willow Road interchange project. Staff has looked over their proposal. We do have some concerns about their proposed reimbursement schedule, and we will be working with the agency. We've talked to them already at least once, and we'll work with them in the department when they come forward for action at a future meeting.
Any discussion? That was an information item, so no action required. I just want to add on the STIP, in case anybody hadn't noticed, we're poor, so all of you that do have ongoing projects, make sure they come in under budget looking ahead of schedule.
Well, and, yeah, let me just make a one mention. I think because we did push out a lot of projects in this STIP, there will likely be a lot of requests for 3090, and I want to just kind of warn people in advance that we may have to be very careful about how we schedule any reimbursements. We don't know what our allocation capacity will really be in the future, and our current policy is like we're going to limit it to 200 million a year. I think that may be quite a bit too high, and we may have to be very creative on how we do future 3090s.
Well, the other side of that is they could go ahead and spend the money, and we could just say, I will gladly give you $1 Tuesday for a hamburger today.
Well, I tried that actually in the STIP adoption. If people mentioned 3090s, I said, well, why don't you just take it out? And you've got the money now, but that didn't go over well.
Yeah.
So I think we'll just have to be very careful as we go forward with 3090s to keep the amount per year at a reasonable level.
Laurel, don't remember to give us good notes before you say
Teresa's taking notes all the time.
Thank you. Okay, moving on, item 62.
Yes, Commissioners. Item 62 is a supplemental vote request. This is a small dollar project which makes the percentage very high. The increase is 114%. The project here was started off as a $281,000 emergency repair to a bridge that was hit by a truck. Originally it was thought that only the outside girder needed to be replaced. Once they started the project, it was determined that the inner girder also needs to be replaced. The inner girder is very complicated. You need to get a specialty contractor, specialty fabricator to fabricate the girder, and the cost now is an extra $320,000. Staff recommends that you approve the supplemental allocation.
Second.
We have
Yes, the department is going after the trucking company that hit the bridge.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Burke. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? For the record? Motion carries. Moving on.
Item 63 is an action item to add 28 new projects to the 2014 shop. The majority of the projects are emergency damage repair. In addition, 15 changes to existing program 2014 shop projects are requested. Most of these changes are nominal updates to construction support to coincide with the capital allocation. Staff recommends approval of the shop amendments.
Second. We have a motion by Commissioner Arp, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Any discussion? All for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Thank you. Moving on, item 65.
Item
64, sorry.
Item 64 is an action item for 2016 shop amendments. This is a request to add 6 new projects to the 2016 shop. The majority of these new projects are safety projects to be programmed with funds held in reservation. In addition, 27 projects in the 2016 shop have changes to cost or schedule. This is basically cleanup from the 2016 shop adoption of last month. Finally, there are 2 projects to take a little bit longer than 4 years to be delivered. These are called long lead projects. These have environmental work that extends beyond the normal 4-year shop period. Staff recommends approval of the shop amendments.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Arp, a second by Commissioner
Galmetti, just for the record.
Galmetti. I'm sorry, the other
Scooping
Jim.
up some of his recommendations.
Oh, speak up. Commissioner Galmetti made the motion. Did you second it, Commissioner Arp?
I will second it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I also
Commissioner
will look
Tavaloni already had that. You're out, Commissioner Arp, sorry. Any discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor? Anybody opposed?
Me? No. I'm actually in favor. Thank you.
Anyone wanting to abstain? Okay, hearing none, the motion carries. Item 65.
Item 65 is an action item for shop minor allocations. The department is requesting the commission allocate $2.4 million for 3 minor projects. These were projects that were not identified as part of the department's annual minor allocation back in June 2015.
I will make a motion to support the minor projects.
Okay, we have a minor proposal by Commissioner Art and a second by Commissioner Dunn. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Anybody abstain, or anyone against, opposing, excuse me? Abstaining? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 67.
Item 66.
Oh, 66, I'm in a hurry today. I'm sorry, 66.
Item 66. This is an action item for shop allocations. The department is requesting that the commission allocate $85 million for 11 projects programmed in the 2014 shop and $27.9 million for projects that were amended in after the commission approved that 2014 shop. Staff recommends approval of these allocations.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Arp. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Okay, now 67.
Item 67 is an action item for a shop advanced allocation. The department is requesting that the commission allocate $240,000 for one mitigation project programmed in the next fiscal year but delivered early. Staff recommends approval.
Second?
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Burke. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 68.
Yes, Commissioners, items 68 through 70 are requests for allocation for STIP projects. Under item 68, this is request to allocate $4.7 million for 2 state-administered projects on the state highway. Under 69 is a request for $2.4 million for 2 locally administered projects on the state highway. And under tab 70, this is a request to allocate a little over $11 million for 10 locally administered STIP projects. Staff recommends your approval of these 3 items.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Dunn and a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Any discussion? Call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Okay, item 71.
Yes, Commissioners. Item 71 is a request to allocate a project that exceeds its programming cost by more than 20%. This particular project is kind of a difficult one because back in August of 2015, we had a similar project. This is a slope restoration project in District 1, where the project was foundations for the retaining walls were designed prior to the final geotechnical report, and with the geotechnical report, the foundations had to be changed, and the cost of the project went up. At that, in August, the department indicated that they would revise their processes to make sure that geotechnical reports were finals before they would do the final designs. Unfortunately, some of the projects in District 1 have slipped through in between, especially this one. This one caught us by surprise. And there's going to be another 5 similar projects down the pike. The department is promising to include those 5 in their quarterly reports, so we are keeping track of them so we don't get surprised again. With that, staff is recommending that you approve this allocation of $19.8 million to restore the slopes on this vital link.
Where's my buddy Charlie?
He's hiding someplace.
I build houses, and we don't start our foundation design, Charlie, until we have the soils report, so I know what kind of foundation. So I hope this is just a brief error, and we're not going to go through this again.
Yes, sir. And I have my division chief for the Division Engineering Services. They fully understand the risks that are involved in these emergency projects and doing these type of designs. We've taken steps to do these investigations much earlier during the environmental phase, so that we can have a more certain design before we get to a point like this.
Thank you.
But unfortunately, we're going to still have 5 more of these.
Well, I don't build houses, but we build everything else, and I want to second Commissioner Gomez. We don't start till we have our soils report, so hopefully, Malcolm, we have issued some kind of directive to all of our team members that that's just good practice.
No, I think DES has taken appropriate measures to try to prevent this from happening, but there's a slew of projects that are coming through that was in a very short amount of time. They're going to get caught up in this issue that were pre-process change.
Sounds expensive. Okay, do we have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Tavaloni. Second by Commissioner Gometti. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. 72, Stephen?
Yes, Commissioners. Item 72 is also a vote for a project that exceeded its programmed amount. This is a $4.2 million environmental mitigation project for the Willits bypass. The Willits bypass was delayed by a couple of years, so the mitigation projects that followed were also delayed. An original permit from Fish and Wildlife, they were to do a fish passage on the south fork of a creek, and they were to design and be in line to do a similar fish passage on the north fork. With both of these now lining up together, it's time the department can construct both at the same time, and is asking for the total funds to do both the north and south fork. The cost is $4.2 million. Staff recommends approval.
Commissioner Gometti?
Malcolm, you know, I don't know the complete details on this mitigation, but some of these mitigations seem to be out of the realm of where we're working. I mean, they're just requests that are exceeding what we should be doing for proper mitigation. Are your people looking into this and questioning more about some of these things? Because it's costing us a boatload of money that we can't use for the intended purposes of strengthening our transportation system.
No, I think it's fair to say that we're constantly having conversations with resource agencies about what the appropriate mitigation is for us to be good stewards, what we think is being good stewards, and what they may think we're responsible for. And I think that there's always a balance there. I think that there is some compromising going on, but we're trying to be good stewards of taxpayers' dollars and only mitigate for the impacts that we have. This is one of those instances as time went on. This is fish passage. We do have a good inventory of where we need to do upgrades for fish passage and where the high priority projects are. In addition to this cost, there's an additional scope of work that's being accomplished as far as fish passage. But yet, what you articulated is an ongoing discussion on almost every project that we're required to do mitigation on. We're working with the resource agencies to try to make sure that that's right-sized.
You know, I forget years ago there was legislation that you had to form a nexus to create fees. And I forget the legislation number, but I'm wondering if we don't need some legislation that basically has to form a nexus of why we have to do XYZ mitigation. I remember we didn't have to do it in the long run, but when we were doing the Caldecott Tunnel, the city of Oakland was asking us to build soccer fields, and I had no idea what the hell the nexus was for that. Unfortunately, we didn't have to do it, but you know, I really think we need to look at this harder, because we're just blowing through a whole bunch of mitigation dollars that we could be using for furthering our transportation system.
Our battle constantly on every project is to ensure any mitigation that we do is to address an impact by that project. We're always trying to accomplish that, and it's a negotiation.
And Commissioner, you are correct in the overall broad scheme. On this particular project, the permit was for incidental fish take at the Willits bypass and stream bed realignment at the Willits bypass, and the cost of that permit is to do the fish passages upstream about 30 miles away.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion under duress, I believe, by Commissioner Arp, seconded by Commissioner Dunn. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 72, Stephen?
Yes, well, we're to 73 now.
73, right, I'm sorry, I looked right at that. My numbers, yeah, you wouldn't think I have a master's in finance.
Item 73 is also a allocation request for a project that's requesting more money than it was originally programmed for. This project here is a roundabout in Kings County. The original programming was done before the department had much experience with roundabouts in District 6. There was a roundabout in Kern County that opened up and needed supplemental funds at a prior commission meeting. Now the department is truing up the estimates with between the roundabouts and is requesting $3.1 million to go and advertise this roundabout project. Staff recommends approval.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Burke. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Okay, moving on, item 74.
Yes, Commissioners, the next two items, 74 and 75, are requests for allocation that are, these were our funds that were programmed under our Prop 1B amendment under tab 58. Under 74, this is a request for an allocation of $900,000 in Proposition 1B funds for the Wayside Power Surge project in Placer County. Under tab 75, it's a request for the $6.674 million in passenger equipment acquisition funds for the department to exercise their option to purchase one additional locomotive. Staff recommends your approval of both of these items.
We have a motion by Commissioner Dunn, a second by Commissioner Gometti. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Moving on, 76.
Commissioners, tab 76 is an action item for financial allocations for ATP projects. This item is to allocate almost $40 million of ATP projects to 42 projects. Staff recommends your approval of this allocation.
Move.
Okay. We have a motion by Commissioner Dunn and a second by Commissioner Burke, I believe. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Moving on, 77.
Commissioners, tab 77 is an action item to advance financial allocations for ATP projects programmed in 1617. This item is to allocate $637,000 of ATP funds to 10 projects. Staff recommends your approval of this allocation.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Any discussion? Hearing none, call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Moving on, item 78.
Item 78 is an action item. This is an allocation request for the waterborne ferry project for fiscal year 17-18. 16-17. This is their annual allocation request and is contingent upon budget approval. Staff recommends your approval.
So moved.
We have a motion by Commissioner Arp, a second by Commissioner Tavaloni. Commissioner Gometti, you want to?
Madam Chair, do we ever get a business plan from these guys, or what's going on down there with the ferry system?
We have not. MTC is here. Maybe they can respond to that question.
We did get a presentation at the last meeting or two ago from them.
Right, Commissioner Gometti, Kenneth Cow with MTC. Back in October when the commission met in Oakland, we did provide an update to the waterborne ferry, and we'd be happy to do so again at the commission's request.
Well, and I'm just looking for our annual business plan. Are we getting that to correspond with?
We will request one and provide you one at the next commission meeting if you
I just want
want.
to make sure they all go together.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? For the record, motion carries. Moving on, item 79.
Commissioners, this item is an action item. This is related to the Proposition 1A amendment that we did earlier in the agenda. A Capital Corridor Joint Powers Authority is requesting an allocation of a little over 10 million of Proposition 1A and 4.6 million of the Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program funds for the Capital Corridor Travel Time Reduction Project. Staff recommends your approval of this allocation.
We have a motion by Commissioner Burke, a second by Commissioner Dunn. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Okay. Item 80.
Aye from everybody there.
I know, we're fading.
I was loud enough for everybody.
It might be time for a protein break, but we're going to muscle up here and get through it, guys. So, item 80.
Yes, the Commissioners, again, this is an action item requesting allocation of 10.2 million for 2 Transit and Intercity Rail Capital Program projects, and staff recommends your approval of this item.
Second.
We have a motion by Commissioner Tavaloni, a second by Commissioner Arp. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Motion carries. Item 81.
Commissioner, items 81 through 87 are time extensions. Included in your packet is a spreadsheet staff prepared summarizing the requests and staff recommendations for items 81 through 87. The shaded rows on the spreadsheet are projects where staff recommendations are different than proposed. Item 81 has a revised book item that is in your packet. It is in yellow and is for project allocation time extensions for the ATP program. The revised book item, it has 34 allocations, time extension requests. Under item 82, 83, and 84, these are contract award time extensions for 1 shop project, 2 aeronautics, and 2 ATP projects. Items 85 and 86 are project completion extensions for 2 STIP projects. And item 87 is an expenditure deadline extension for a STIP project. Staff recommends you approve the time extensions for items 81 through 87 as reflected on the spreadsheet.
Second.
I have a question on 81. This is not meant as a criticism against any specific project, but you know, all the competition for these projects, and everybody applies, and then they say they're going to do this project in this period of time, and now you got 38 of them that want an extension. How does that score up with the other projects that actually didn't get approved?
I think it's a good point. Teresa, do you have a comment? Or?
This is a concern to us, but and given that this is cycle 1 of the ATP program, a lot of these agencies are relatively new to the state process. And so moving forward, I leave to Lori to see how we can better help the agencies to better schedule the components of the program, of their project.
Yes, we see that this is a particular problem in the cycle 1 because it's a lot of new agencies that aren't as used to the process. So we're getting a lot of allocation time extension requests. But we've talked to the RTPA group and the Rural Counties Task Force group, and so we're all going to work together on helping these agencies do a little bit better on their scheduling. We're hoping that for cycle 2 and then particularly in cycle 3 that we'll have a much better delivery schedules on these.
So I guess I would recommend that we separate 81 from the rest of these, have a separate motion on them, because to me this is a lot of projects to get delayed, and I think it's a problem, and part of the problem we have is if we don't act on the extension, I don't know what that really means, because they're not going to get it done anyway, right? On time. I just have a problem with it, so I want to have a different vote on 81.
Okay, so Commissioner Tavaloni, I think you made the original motion, so do you want to accept the friendly amendment, or pull off 81 out of your motion? How do you want to do this? Do you want to vote on Okay, so let's pull item 81 off of Tavaloni's motion. So Commissioner Tavaloni's motion applied to items 82 through 87, is that correct?
That would be correct.
And the second one, I
Yes.
think, was by Commissioner Dunn, so you're fine to second the amended. Okay, so we'll call for a vote first on the 82 through 87. All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries. Now we'll go back to item 81. Stephen, looks like maybe you want to say something?
Yes, I just need to caution you that if you do not approve the extension requests, those projects would become automatic failures because they have to be delivered within a certain time frame, and if you don't extend the time frame, they're gone.
Okay, how would we put some teeth? I think to...
Yeah, that's the point. That is the point that I'm trying to make here, is that it begins to look like the system's getting gamed. People got money and then they delayed the project. I'm not saying they did it deliberately, but in some cases you got to wonder about the other folks that didn't get the money, and maybe their project would have got done on time. So I got to, it kind of bugs me, frankly.
We understand that, but as it was stated before, these are people that are fresh to the game. The Caltrans processes are tough processes. The FHWA processes are very tough, and some people are just caught unaware.
They will get my vote, but I'm watching.
Good.
Malcolm?
Hey, Stephen, just for clarification, so this is still cycle 1?
Yes.
Okay, so cycle 1, I'm going to give a little bit of flexibility. It was a 2-year program. And cycle 3, I think, cycle 2 was spread over 3 years. It's ultimately going to be a 4-year cycle, which gives them a little bit more time. Cycle 1 was compressed.
Was short, yes.
And we knew that in year 1, and I expect, exactly like you would expect, them to get better with time. And I sending a clear message, but cycle 1 was compressed to 2 years, in addition to the fact that you have some smaller agencies that are less sophisticated and now have to deal with federal and state funds. So I will offer that.
In looking at the reasons, a number of them are the environmental is late. Some of them change of regulations. So I think you kind of have to differentiate between some of those where it's not their fault. Something external came in. And now there's some here that didn't get the sign right or something. I mean, I think that's a little bit different.
Well, the whole point of extensions is that they have to be beyond the control of the agency. And most
Okay,
of
it has to be beyond their control.
Yes.
Okay. Did someone re-second it? Or?
Staff recommends you approve item 81.
I think we need a motion.
I'll move it.
Okay, so Commissioner Burke moves. Second by Commissioner Gardino. Any further discussion?
I understand.
Okay. Hearing no further discussion, I'll call for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
These are some very...
Did you want a roll call vote on that? Anybody opposed?
Applying.
Anybody abstaining? I'm sorry, Commissioner Burke, did I
I
interrupt
just
you?
want to say that some of these are very unsophisticated applicants.
Well, it's new territory, I think, for a lot of folks, and we need to make sure, I've heard on some of our other partners are not traditional partners, so, okay.
I have a closing comment before you close under general business.
Okay.
I've just been a little bit in my back of my mind going back to item 50 where Eric made a good report, I thought, on the status of the capital outlay support effort. As a person who's been in charge of stuff a lot, it's always good when you tell somebody to do something and they come back to you with a report and they're not done yet, to give them a little encouragement. I hope that you don't feel from what was said up here that you guys aren't doing a good job on that. I think you are. And I'm looking forward to seeing the interim report and the final report and encourage you to keep moving on it. I think it's very important work and appreciate your efforts.
With that, do we have any other commission comments? Any public comments that we need to? If not, I'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you.